The galaxy had long been under the shadow of the Dominion, a ruthless empire that spread fear across star systems, conquering and subjugating weaker species. They ruled with an iron fist, crushing entire civilizations under their boot heels without mercy. Their vast fleets, equipped with technologically superior weaponry, rendered any resistance futile. The Dominion had terrorized every corner of space for centuries, and no force had ever posed a real challenge to them. Until now. In the vast expanse of space, the Galactic Council convened, its members a mix of various alien species, each with their own motives and agendas. They had gathered to discuss the threat humanity posed, a species they had dismissed as primitive and inconsequential. The Council members, a mix of cold-blooded reptiles, calculating insectoids, and wise, ancient beings, all agreed that Earth was not worth their attention. After all, what could a single planet full of flesh monkeys possibly offer the Dominion? But as the meeting began, a shockwave rippled through the chamber. A message from the Dominion's High Command. The message was short, direct, and chilling. Human warship encountered. Losses heavy. Request immediate reinforcements. The Council fell silent. It was almost laughable. The Dominion, which had obliterated countless civilizations, had encountered a single human warship, and had sustained significant losses. The transmission had barely finished when the first images of the battle appeared on the Council's holoscreens. The scene was almost too absurd to believe. A solitary human warship, sleek and elegant, fired precision shots, tearing through the Dominion's formidable fleets like they were made of paper. Captain Sarah Lasker of the USS Resilience had been at the helm of humanity's single response to the Dominion's years of terror. She had received a simple order from Earth's top brass: engage and hold the line. What she had not expected was to find herself face to face with the overwhelming force of the Dominion's war machine. But Captain Lasker, like most humans, had something that the aliens underestimated: a fierce will to survive and an unyielding resolve. As the battle raged, the Resilience danced through the chaos, its advanced weapons systems outclassing anything the Dominion had anticipated. Lasker knew how to think fast. She knew how to adapt in ways the Dominion had never prepared for. The humans, with their creativity and their unpredictable tactics, had shown the invincible Dominion that they were not to be trifled with. "Captain, we've lost communications with the fleet," Lieutenant Ramirez, her second-in-command, reported, his voice crackling through the comms. The Resilience was a lone spear in the vast darkness of space. The Dominion's warships had regrouped, and they were closing in. Lasker's brow furrowed as she surveyed the tactical display. The Dominion fleet had regrouped faster than she'd anticipated. They were playing a different game now, no longer underestimating their opponent, but approaching with calculated precision. It was clear they were not used to being attacked with this kind of resolve. "We have one shot at this," Lasker muttered, more to herself than anyone else. She quickly glanced at the tactical map. A strategic flaw in the Dominion's formation was visible. It was a slight miscalculation, a single point where their defense was weaker than they realized. Lasker wasn't about to waste this opportunity. "Ramirez, prepare to execute evasive maneuvers. I'll need full power to the forward cannons. This is our only chance." The crew moved quickly, tension filling the air. The Resilience wasn't just any ship, it was a symbol of Earth's defiance, a testament to the ingenuity of a species that had only recently joined the galactic stage. Unlike the Dominion ships, which were built for sheer might and conquest, the Resilience was crafted with cunning precision, capable of adapting to the flow of battle in ways the Dominion had never anticipated. The moment arrived. Captain Lasker's hands hovered over the command console, her mind calculating every possible outcome. She wasn't just fighting for victory now, she was fighting for survival, for the survival of humanity itself. With a swift movement, she issued the order, and the Resilience shot forward, its cannons firing in quick succession, sending powerful blasts into the heart of the Dominion's fleet. A moment of silence passed as the blast struck. Then chaos erupted. Dominion ships began to disintegrate before they even had time to retaliate. But the Resilience wasn't untouched. The ship shuddered as a barrage of counterattacks slammed into its hull, alarms blaring across the bridge. The shields were holding, but just barely. "Captain, we've sustained heavy damage!" Ramirez shouted, his voice rising above the din of the alarms. "We can't take much more of this!" Lasker's gaze hardened. The battle wasn't over. She had known the risks when she set out on this mission. It was her responsibility now to ensure the survival of not just her ship, but of every human soul who had ever dared to challenge the Dominion. She wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. "Hold your ground," she commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. "We're not just defending Earth. We're sending a message. No one can take us down, not even the Dominion. We fight together, or we don't fight at all." The battle continued to unfold around them, the Resilience dancing through fire and death, taking every shot that came its way and retaliating tenfold. It was humanity's first taste of galactic warfare, and it was more than a fight for survival. It was the first step towards something far greater. The Dominion, once thought invincible, would never again underestimate the power of Earth. And Captain Lasker's crew would never forget the day they sent that message to the stars. The battle between humanity and the Dominion was far from over. In the aftermath of the initial confrontation, Captain Sarah Lasker stood at the bridge of the USS Resilience, her eyes scanning the damage reports that poured in from every angle. The Resilience had dealt a devastating blow to the Dominion's fleet, but the victory felt hollow. The enemy was regrouping, and they were learning from their mistakes. As the minutes ticked by, the crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational. The hum of the engines was faint, a reminder of just how close they had come to being wiped out in the initial battle. But Lasker wasn't a woman to dwell on what might have been. She was focused on what was to come. "Captain," Lieutenant Ramirez's voice broke her concentration. "We've received new intelligence from Earth Command. The Dominion is sending in reinforcements, more than we've ever seen before." Lasker clenched her fists. This was the challenge she had been preparing for. The Dominion thought they could crush humanity under their boothiel, but they had underestimated the resolve of Earth's defenders. What they didn't realize was that humanity fought not just for survival, but for the future. For the freedom to decide its own destiny. "They're underestimating us," Lasker said, her voice cold with determination. "And that will be their downfall." The Dominion's reinforcements were unlike anything they had encountered before. Massive warships, sleek and menacing, appeared in the distance. They were armed with weapons capable of annihilating entire fleets in an instant. For a moment, the Resilience felt small, alone in the vastness of space, surrounded by enemies who had a much larger army at their disposal. But Lasker refused to give in to fear. She knew they had one advantage that the Dominion didn't: unpredictability. Humanity had a way of thinking outside the box, of doing the unthinkable to overcome insurmountable odds. The Dominion had fought countless battles, but they had never faced an enemy like Earth. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Lasker ordered. "We can't fight them head-on. We need to outsmart them. Think like them, but be faster." Her crew moved with precision, already anticipating her orders. Every moment mattered now. The Dominion fleet was closing in fast, but the Resilience had one advantage: the ability to use the terrain of space to its benefit. They weren't fighting in an open field, they were in the heart of an asteroid belt. And Lasker had a plan to use that to her advantage. The Resilience shot toward the asteroid belt at full speed, weaving between the massive rocks that floated in the void. The Dominion ships, while faster and more heavily armed, were not designed to maneuver in such a dense environment. The asteroids provided a natural cover, allowing the Resilience to slip behind them and avoid the Dominion's weapons. "Take out their communications," Lasker barked, her eyes narrowing as she studied the enemy's movements. "We need to sever their coordination." The crew wasted no time. They had the technology, the firepower, and the determination to make it work. The Resilience fired a series of precision strikes, taking out the Dominion's communications satellites. It was a risky move, but it paid off. Without their communication network, the Dominion ships began to falter. They were no longer able to coordinate their attacks effectively, and their movements became erratic. For a moment, the tide of the battle shifted. The Resilience fired again, targeting the weaker points in the Dominion fleet's defenses. The Dominion ships began to lose their cohesion, each one trying to act on its own without the support of the rest of the fleet. The chaos was palpable as the Resilience danced through the battlefield, using the cover of the asteroid belt to launch surprise attacks, hitting where the Dominion least expected. "Captain, we've got a problem," Ramirez said, his voice filled with urgency. "There's a flagship among their reinforcements. It's heavily shielded, and it's launching fighters." Lasker's mind raced. The flagship was the heart of the Dominion fleet, the command center that coordinated the entire battle. If they didn't take it down soon, the Dominion would regain control. But attacking it head-on would be suicide. "We need to disable their shields," Lasker said, her voice steady despite the pressure mounting around her. "Ramirez, plot a course to the flagship's blind spot. We'll need to hit it from the rear." The crew worked quickly, the Resilience adjusting its course as they closed in on the flagship. The Dominion's fighters swarmed around them, but Lasker and her crew were ready. The ship's advanced weapons systems fired with deadly precision, taking down fighter after fighter as they raced toward their target. The Resilience was now within striking distance of the flagship, and the tension in the air was palpable. Lasker's fingers danced over the control panel, her mind calculating the exact moment they needed to strike. "Now!" she commanded, and the Resilience unleashed a full barrage of energy blasts at the flagship's shields, concentrating on the weak spots. The blasts rocked the flagship, and for a moment, it seemed as though the Dominion's fleet might falter entirely. But the flagship's shields held, just barely. The Dominion commanders, realizing the threat to their command center, regrouped quickly, preparing for another assault. Lasker wasn't about to give them that chance. "Get ready for the final push," she said, her voice unwavering. They had one shot left to break the Dominion's stranglehold on the battle. As the Resilience surged forward, Lasker's plan took shape in her mind. She was playing a dangerous game, one that would either ensure humanity's survival or seal their fate. The stakes had never been higher. The Resilience closed in on the Dominion flagship, and with it, the tension in the air became almost unbearable. The crew had been maneuvering for hours, every moment critical. The previous hits on the Dominion fleet had scattered them, but the flagship was still fully operational, its shields holding strong despite their best efforts. Sarah Lasker stood at the helm, eyes locked on the ship's trajectory. The time for subtlety had passed. It was now or never. "We need to breach their defenses," she muttered, her hand gripping the armrest of her command chair. "We can't afford to waste another minute." "Captain, the shields are still holding," Ramirez warned. "We need a way inside, or they'll have time to regroup and reinforce. If they do, we're done for." Sarah didn't answer immediately. Her mind raced, the weight of command pressing on her. She knew this was the point where everything could go wrong. But the only way to survive was to think beyond the expected, to take risks that others wouldn't dare. A plan began to form, bold and unorthodox. If the Resilience couldn't outfight the Dominion flagship directly, they'd have to outthink it. She turned to her weapons officer, Lieutenant Calloway. "Lieutenant, are the stealth capabilities online?" she asked, voice firm and determined. "Yes, Captain. We've been running tests for the last few hours. The cloaking systems are operational, but we haven't had time to fine-tune them to full stealth mode," Calloway replied, his face a picture of anxiety. "It'll have to do," Sarah decided. "We're going in. I want us invisible, right up to the flagship's hull. If we can get close enough, we'll disable their weapons systems before they even know what hit them." The crew went to work with newfound urgency. The atmosphere aboard the Resilience shifted, a sense of unity forming as everyone knew they were about to embark on the most dangerous part of the mission. The Dominion fleet was still reeling from the earlier hits, but their flagship was an entirely different beast, imposing, heavily shielded, and practically indestructible unless attacked at the right angle. The Resilience engaged its cloaking technology, and the ship's outline dissolved into the emptiness of space. They had a brief window of time, only moments before the Dominion flagship's sensors would reset and detect them. This was the critical moment. With a deep breath, Captain Lasker gave the order. "Steady, everyone," she said softly, her voice a whisper of command through the chaos. "Take us in." The Resilience glided silently through space, hidden by the stealth systems, its engines humming softly as it maneuvered toward the Dominion flagship. On the bridge, the crew's eyes were glued to their monitors, calculating every second. "Approaching the flagship's blind spot," Ramirez called. "We're nearly there." The atmosphere on the bridge grew more intense with each passing moment. Sarah's fingers were poised above the control panel, her mind focused on the task at hand. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity could stand its ground against the might of the Dominion, that they weren't just an easy target to be wiped out. The flagship loomed larger now, its massive size filling the viewport. It was magnificent, a behemoth of weaponry and power. But as Sarah knew all too well, even giants had weak points. The key was getting close enough to exploit them. "Now!" Sarah shouted. In a swift move, the Resilience dropped its cloaking shield and emerged directly beneath the flagship. The entire crew held their breath. They had one chance to do this. If they missed, the Dominion flagship would tear them apart before they could get another shot. But it was too late to turn back now. The Resilience unleashed a salvo of targeted ion blasts at the flagship's primary weapons systems, hitting it where the shields were weakest. Explosions erupted along the hull, as energy pulses cut through the gaps in the Dominion's defenses. The flagship's weapons systems sparked and sputtered, its main cannons temporarily disabled. The Resilience's next move was already being calculated. But just as the explosions subsided, the flagship retaliated. A massive burst of plasma energy erupted from its engines, creating a shockwave that sent the Resilience tumbling. Crew members were thrown from their seats, alarms blared across the bridge, and the ship's systems flickered. For a brief moment, Sarah feared they might have gone too far. But she quickly regained her composure. "Damage report!" she barked, wiping blood from her lip where a console had struck her during the shockwave. "Shields holding at 45%. Hull integrity compromised in several areas," Ramirez said, his voice strained but focused. "We've lost power in secondary systems, but we're still operational." Sarah took a deep breath. It wasn't perfect, but they were still alive, and they had wounded the flagship. It was time to capitalize on this opportunity. "All hands brace for impact," Sarah ordered. "Prepare for a full assault on the flagship's bridge. We can finish this. We have to." She turned to Lieutenant Calloway. "Deploy our drones? We'll overload their core." The drones, small but deadly, were released from the Resilience's belly, swarming toward the flagship like a swarm of hornets. The Dominion flagship attempted to fire its remaining defenses, but without the control of its main weapons, it was like swinging a sword without strength behind it. The drones attached themselves to the flagship's hull, releasing explosive charges directly into its power core. The blasts reverberated through the ship as the Resilience pulled back, watching as the Dominion flagship began to burn from within. "This is it," Sarah muttered, the tension in her chest finally easing. "We've broken them." The flagship's defensive shields flickered and faltered, unable to withstand the barrage of attacks. One final explosion rocked the ship, and the flagship began to disintegrate, taking with it the remaining vestiges of the Dominion fleet's strength. The crew cheered as the battle drew to a close. They had done it, against all odds. Humanity had proven that it wasn't to be underestimated. And in that moment, the Resilience stood victorious, a testament to the strength, ingenuity, and courage of those who dared to fight back. The aftermath of the battle was eerily quiet. The remnants of the Dominion fleet were scattered across space, debris drifting aimlessly in the void. The massive flagship that had once commanded so much fear and respect from the galaxy's enemies was now nothing more than a charred skeleton, drifting with no purpose. The Resilience sat in the midst of the destruction, battered but intact, its hull scarred from the battle. But despite the damage, its crew was alive, and that was all that mattered. Sarah Lasker stood on the bridge, gazing out at the silent expanse. The stars, once so distant, now felt closer, almost within reach. She could hear the hum of the ship's engines, the soft chime of system alerts, but there was an odd stillness that hung over the crew. The battle was won, but at what cost? Many of their comrades were wounded, and repairs were already underway, but the reality of what they had just accomplished hadn't quite sunk in. "Captain, damage reports are coming in," Ramirez called out, his voice steady but laden with exhaustion. "We've sustained significant hull breaches, and our power systems are running at 40% capacity. But we're stable. It'll take some time, but we'll make it." Sarah nodded but didn't respond immediately. She was too deep in thought, replaying the battle in her mind, wondering if there was something they could have done better or faster. Every decision, every move, had been crucial. One wrong step could have meant the end, and yet here they were, victorious, against all odds. "Sarah?" A voice broke her from her reverie. It was Calloway, standing at her side, his eyes tired but filled with admiration. "You did it! You led us through the impossible." She shook her head slightly, not wanting to bask in the glory of victory just yet. "We did it. All of us. This wasn't just me. We came together as a team, and that's what made the difference." A small smile tugged at the corner of Calloway's lips. "Still, you were the one who kept us going. You saw the big picture, even when everything was falling apart. I don't think any of us could have done it without you." Sarah couldn't help but smile back. Her crew's unwavering trust in her had carried her through the hardest moments. It wasn't her leadership alone that had won the battle. It was the collective strength, resourcefulness, and courage of every person aboard the Resilience. They had been underestimated, dismissed as a small, inconsequential fleet. Yet they had proven that humanity, though new to the galactic stage, was a force to be reckoned with. "We all pulled through," Sarah repeated. "But we need to keep moving. The Dominion won't take this defeat lying down. They'll be back, and we need to be ready." She turned her attention to the viewscreen, watching as the stars twinkled in the distance. There was still much to do. The victory was important, yes, but it was only one battle in what was likely to be a much longer war. Humanity had just earned the respect of the galaxy, but that respect would be fleeting if they didn't continue to prove their strength, their resilience. "Captain," Ramirez interrupted her thoughts. "The Dominion is sending a signal. They want to discuss terms." The words hung in the air for a moment before Sarah responded. "Terms?" She turned toward Ramirez, her expression unreadable. "They've just lost their flagship and a significant portion of their fleet, and now they want to talk? They'll try to spin this into a negotiation. We'll see," Ramirez said, voice tense. "They could be looking for a way out of this. They may not have the strength to continue the war, not after losing so much." "Prepare for a transmission," Sarah ordered. She had no illusions about the Dominion's intentions. This was a species that thrived on control and dominance, and their pride wouldn't allow them to admit defeat easily. But the fact that they were reaching out at all meant something had shifted. It was a crack in their armor, a sign that they were no longer the invincible force they once were. A few moments later, a holographic image flickered to life on the bridge. The figure that appeared was a tall, imposing alien with an angular face and sharp, predatory eyes, the same species that had once terrorized the galaxy with their ruthless efficiency. His name, Sarah knew, was Track, commander of the Dominion forces. He spoke first, his voice cold but with a faint tremor of uncertainty. "Captain Lasker, I trust you are satisfied with the devastation you have wrought. However, I believe we both know this war can only end in one of two ways: your complete annihilation or a ceasefire. I suggest you consider the latter." Sarah didn't flinch. She met his gaze with unyielding resolve. "The war is over. You've been defeated. The galaxy knows it. We're not interested in ceasefires or negotiations. But we will guarantee one thing: if you push us, we will fight, and you will lose again. Only this time, it will be final." Track's eyes narrowed, but there was something different about his expression now. Perhaps it was fear, or maybe it was respect. Either way, it was clear that the Dominion was no longer the all-powerful force they once were. "You are foolish to challenge the Dominion," Trax said, though his voice lacked its former venom. "But I believe you may be right. This battle has proven costly for us." "Very well, Captain Lasker. We will reconsider our approach. For now, the war will pause." The transmission ended, and silence filled the bridge once more. Sarah looked around at her crew, their faces a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "They've backed down," Ramirez said, still processing the enormity of it all. "For now," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "But we've made our point. We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of. And that's something they won't forget." As the crew of the Resilience celebrated, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. This battle had proven that humanity could stand its ground, that they were not to be underestimated. But more than that, it had shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a single ship, a single crew, could change the course of history. "Let's prepare for the next step," Sarah said with a grin. "The war may not be over, but we've just taken the first real victory. And I have a feeling this is only the beginning." As the crew got to work, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had come a long way, and though the road ahead was still uncertain, one thing was clear: they were no longer afraid of the galaxy. And the galaxy had better start taking them seriously.